Welcome back to Hungry Theologian, helping you taste and see that the Lord is good. This is part 4 of our series of recipes from the book Supper of the Lamb by Robert Farrar Capon. And today we're finishing Capon's recipes with a lamb and barley soup. Check out the other videos in the series to prepare your leg of lamb for this recipe. This is the last of Capon's recipes from lamb for 8 persons 4 times. In part 2, I had you set aside an extra small portion of lamb for a bonus recipe that I'm going to add. It's too good to pass up if you already have the lamb cooked. But today, since we're finishing the last of Capon's recipes, after we're done cooking, I'll reflect a little bit on some of the theology he gives us in the book. This is a fun recipe because you can get as creative as you want with what you add to your soup. Use whatever you have on hand or whatever sounds good to you. In a large stock pot, melt 4 tablespoons of butter, then saute 2 medium onions sliced, 2 carrots peeled and sliced, 2 celery stalks sliced, 1 to 2 cups worth of chopped turnip, and a few cloves of crushed garlic. Once the onion is translucent, add your lamb bone and any remaining scraps, 3 quarts of water, half a cup of barley, and some rosemary and thyme. Feel free to use fresh or dried herbs, whatever you have around. You can see I'm using dried herbs because that's what I had on hand today. If you have some stock or broth at home, you could add it in place of some of the water, but the lamb bone will give us plenty of flavor if you just used water. I was planning on only using water for this, but then right before I started cooking, my dad offered me some leftover homemade chicken stock, so I added that. Season with a little salt and pepper, bring to a boil, then turn down the heat and simmer for 2 hours. After an hour, I'm going to add a can of diced tomatoes and a can of rinsed chickpeas. Remember, this is where you get as creative as you want and use what you have in the fridge and pantry. I like to skim the fat off the soup throughout its cooking time. If you wait until the end to skim the fat, you risk losing more of the flavorful broth as you skim off the fat. When it's done cooking, pull out the bone, pick off any meat, and add it to the soup. You can throw the bone away at this point. This soup freezes very well, which is exactly what I'm going to do. To make this an even easier meal next week, I've got a loaf of sourdough in the freezer that I'll pull out to serve with the soup. Of course, I need to try a small bowl of it before it gets put away. Since we're finishing Capon's recipes today with this soup, I wanted to reflect a little bit on some of the theology he gives us in the book. You may have noticed the quote that I put at the end of each video. Food is the daily sacrament of unnecessary goodness, ordained for a continual remembrance that the world will always be more delicious than it is useful. Our world is obsessed with things that are useful. We want to maximize productivity and efficiency. So much so that I'll spend time researching the best surge protector because I want to make sure I'm getting the absolute most value for my money. But this obsession with efficiency, productivity, and usefulness is why such a common answer to the question, how are you, is simply busy. One of the problems with being so focused on usefulness is that anything useful is by definition a means to another end and is therefore less important than that end. Whatever's most important in life can't simply be a means to an end. James Shaw offers a similar perspective when he says that we're most human when we're engaging in things that aren't practical or useful. That's why the Sabbath, 1 day a week to rest from our labor and delight in God, is a foretaste of our future life with God. Karl Barth describes the first Sabbath, the 7th day of creation, as a day when humans and God together rest and delight in everything that God has made. Humans don't have to first work to earn their rest, but are instead invited to share in God's joy. The freedom to rest and delight in God and creation is a gift of God's grace. This is what Capon means when he says that food is a daily sacrament of unnecessary goodness. Good food is a reminder that there's more to life than being useful. Good food is an opportunity to delight in the fact that God made the world to be delicious. This is the last video in the series of recipes from Supper of the Lamb. If you're intrigued by what you've heard and you want to read the book, I highly recommend it, and I've got a link in the description. But like I said, next time I've got a bonus recipe for you using the last portion of your leg of lamb. It's a lamb and goat cheese pizza. It's too good to pass up if you already have the lamb cooked. If you found this video helpful and you'd like to see more, please consider subscribing and sharing with your friends.